Okay, we're here with Naomi Brockwell. She's a fledgling star in the movie business and the TV business, and she also is well versed in economics, which we were discussing just a moment ago. So we are really glad to have you on the show, and we want to share with our viewers your experiences, your suggestions, your advice for them, because that's what we need. We need more people like yourself, uh, beautiful, active, and intelligent ladies and men that are willing to promote freedom in the media. That's what we need.
Thank you very much. There's quite a lot of compliments there. I am delighted to be here at Students for Liberty. I love this conference. I come every year and it's just so delightful, the inspiration that you get being surrounded by young people who are so enthusiastic about freedom and who really want to make the world a better place. And I believe they have the right tools for doing so. You know, there are a lot of people in the world who want to change it for the better, but I really don't feel that they know where to direct their energy, as well as some of the people you see at a conference like this, people who are well versed in economics, people who are well versed in politics, who understand the best ways to affect change in society.
Well, you gave a talk here.
I did.
And I unfortunately missed it because I had this bad cold I told you about.
Are you feeling better today?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, I spoke about film and freedom. So I work at the Moving Picture Institute, an amazing organization. We promote freedom through film. And I spoke about how film is one of the most powerful tools we have for changing ideas and for changing the world. And that is because people don't usually resonate with statistics or data or facts or rational arguments. People connect emotionally to arguments, and you can really harness that with film, and that's what we try to do. So we seek out filmmakers who are promoting ideas of freedom. We produce content in-house. We have some very exciting projects coming up this year to further the cause of freedom. So it's a great organization, and I spoke a lot in my talk about strategies that some of these organizations who are represented here at Students for Liberty, some of the tools that they can use and some of the strategies that they can carry out to really create change in their society, that the best ways to promote freedom and actually further the cause.
Give us a few specific suggestions so that our viewers can follow up on.
Right. Well, I find that libertarians in general, they're very fact-driven and they're very rational. And that's not a good way to communicate with people. If you logically shut down their argument, a lot of people will put up defenses and they won't listen to your argument. If you're being told that you're wrong, you're immediately going to get defensive, and it's just biological. We have flight or fight mechanism that immediately comes into play. Now, a very valuable tool for shutting down that mechanism is humor. It's a fantastic tool. So if you can get people on side by connecting with them, using humor, using laughter, then that is a great way to actually talk with them. You can ridicule their ideas, but as long as we're both laughing, people are going to listen, and it can be very valuable. I also find that just the power of storytelling, rather than giving people statistics and saying, 500 people in this country were persecuted or 16 million people in this country were killed. When you give data like that, you would presume that the larger the number, the more people would be emotionally affected by that statistic. Oh, 16 million people, that's horrible. But the human brain doesn't really work like that. We actually resonate with an individual story. We resonate with a story
So use an example, a concrete example that really illustrates the issue that you're trying to bring to the attention.
So you talk about the situation of eminent domain. You could say, 40 people in this town lost their homes and lost their businesses and all that. That's fine as a statistic, but if you put it into the context of a story, if you tell that story in an evocative way through film, using music, using all of the production tools that film has to offer, you can connect with people. You can tell a single story, and suddenly people are connected to that story. You learn about this family that has been living there for 60 years, and they've built up their community, they've built up their business, and you can learn about how their society is gradually shut down as people are moved out of this area forcibly. And
the unintended consequences of these great strategies that the welfare state is promoting, right?
Exactly. And it's not just that. I mean, this is really eminent domain is a crony issue. So this is an issue where you have big players who are advocating for something, and the people who are against it really don't know what's going on, and so they're silent force. They're not empowered to speak up against any sort of proposition. For example, the Brooklyn Stadium. MPI has a great film about that. It was shortlisted for an Oscar. And it's about eminent domain, and it's about the building of the stadium and about what actually happened. And you follow this one guy who refused to move out of his apartment. And the entire neighborhood was slowly shut down. They started boarding up buildings that were perfectly good buildings, but they boarded up so that they could convince people that this was a derelict area that needed to be rebuilt. You know, they're really working within loopholes in government to enact these crony plans that were helping just to select few people, special interest groups that would, end up making a profit from this. So it's a fantastic story. I would recommend it. And it's those types of stories that we're interested in telling at the MPI, and that I feel that all of these organizations should be telling. Don't talk about statistics. Find a single example. Find an example of, like in Dallas Buyers Club, fantastic film. It talks about the FDA, and it talks about people, a single person who is hurt by FDA rulings. So it's a great example of how you can convey ideas in a powerful and emotionally charged way.
So we should send our draft projects for movies to MPI, right?
Well, currently, we're seeking comedy writers right now for a big project. So if anyone is a comedy writer out there, please send us an email. But in general, if you're a filmmaker, we want to help you if you are trying to advance the cause of liberty. So we have lots of great programs. We have screenwriting workshops. We give fiscal sponsorship, but also we provide them with mentors. We plug them in to the film industry. We put interns into Hollywood.
So let me ask you a question. How have you been able to work your way into television? Because that's really hard to break into.
Right. Well, I sort of had a very strange journey. I started out studying economics in Australia, and then just thought it was terrible, absolutely terrible. It was all Keynesian, and I didn't agree with what was being said. At that stage, I didn't really have much other concrete economic theory to work with, but I very much understood how society functioned, where if you leave it alone, I really like the idea that there is no single person who can understand all of the economy, so why would we put one single person in charge of planning it? That doesn't make much sense to me. So I then went on to do an acting degree, then I did a degree in classical music, and I started a production company, sort of went that route. And from there, I discovered Moving Picture Institute as well, but I produced a couple of my own features and lots of short films, and it just sort of was an evolution. I moved to New York, I discovered the Austrian economic scene. I discovered Gene Epstein, who's the economic editor at Barron's. He gave me like a reading list a mile long, and I loved that information. I just read everything. I devoured all of this knowledge, and now I see myself as someone who has a communications background, who understands a lot about economics. So I find that my niche is explaining all these economic ideas to people in an easily digestible way, and teaching people to communicate them to others as well.
So how were you able to get on Fox Business News?
Right, well, that was actually through my work in Bitcoin. Again, as someone who I wouldn't consider myself the most techie person in the world. I am not like these amazing people in these startups who understand everything to do with the hash function and the algorithm and blockchain. And I do understand Bitcoin though, and I do understand it in a way that I can explain to other people. So I became enamored by Bitcoin. I became enamored by the possibility of a currency that exists outside of government coercion, that is peer-to-peer, that has no central focal point, that can be shut down. That fascinated me. And what fascinated me more was this currency was functioning. This was actually working. People were using it, whether they were just on the fringes of society or not. This was a functioning currency. So it fascinated me, and I learned more and more about it. And then I started getting interviews on nationally syndicated television shows like The Independent, Stossel, to explain to people what Bitcoin is and why it's important, why people should be taking note. I think that people should be interested in this. Even if you dismiss it, at least take the time to learn about it, because I think it's a revolutionary technology.
So do you know what happened that Kennedy took over that show, The Independence, and Matt and
Camille?
Camille were left out in the cold?
Left out in the cold. Well, Kennedy, yeah, I mean, she's great. She's really, really great. So unfortunately, I mean, I'm of the millennial generation, so I don't have cable news. I don't have cable television, I mean. So I can't actually watch the show. So I don't know. I don't know what...
But maybe you have the inside story. Since,
Oh, I wish. I wish. No, I haven't been given proven information there. But it is interesting seeing this cable format being perpetuated in an era where increasingly people are watching more and more internet television. So I would be curious to see what happens to cable television in 10 years' time, when more and more people are going to be turning to the internet for their news sources.
So, in other words, we should communicate with the producers of these shows and try to persuade them to get us on television?
I feel that the producers of these shows, I mean, if I were giving them advice from my very, experienced standpoint, here's my advice to you,
Yes,
incredibly
that's right.
successful
Right,
national
right.
cable
Well, you got
network.
your foot in the door. That's the important thing.
Well, I mean, I would encourage them to make their shows available online. A lot of these shows aren't available online. So someone like myself, I mean, then they're missing out on a huge audience, and they're missing out on the younger audience, and that's important. Because if you're missing out on the younger audience, they're the people who will be running society soon. So you don't want them to only be exposed to one side of ideas. If you want your ideas out there, you need to go to the mediums that they're involved with. You need to go to the internet.
So let me share an experience that I had trying to get on the Fox News Business Network, or Fox News. Maybe 12 or 15 years ago, John Stossel called me at my home and said that he really liked my interviews and that maybe we could do a segment. So I prepared a little package for him, and then he said, cut it down to 12 minutes